Let's see how this works. Oh, it worked fine. Oh, here's Katie.
Oh my gosh, thank God. I was a backup note taker, so I'm always happy.
We're delighted to see you, Katie. Ray and I were no keeper 1 and 2, and we were,
Especially happy.
and we were, like, okay, we'll do our best. It is also helpful for us to do that, because then we check it back to what Katie comes up with to see,
Make sure.
there's that, yeah. Okay, so at section 2208, which will now be a different number, but we're talking about community action agencies in their role for VHAR. So department shall designate a
We don't like the word designate.
um,
gonna give up.
yeah,
It's
I
just
think
like.
it's
Authorized,
authorized,
identify.
maybe authorized.
Authorize is what we use for the
PCCs?
Yeah, PCCs. Yeah, so authorize.
Yeah.
We had a long conversation about.
We didn't
that.
want to use designate for PCCs either. Each service area of the state.
2208.
Oh, this is Regional Resource Organization?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, which now has a new title.
I just rewrote it based on your conversation this morning, so I don't even know if the word authorize or designate is in there anymore.
Oh, okay,
Oh.
all right.
Cause
So-
yeah, we're talking about where we left off and we're there.
Yeah.
But we're not doing revisions, yeah.
So-
Looking at 2.1.
Oh, yeah, we're still on 1.5 or 1.2. So, households that are experiencing power saving. Okay, so I think that we need to make sure that, we are including under these, the preventative stuff that we've been talking about, so that upstream stuff, so what,
That's just the section cross-reference needs to be included and that covers it. Because it's homelessness or precariously housed, and then it received, to ensure they receive shelter.
or other supportive
supportive
services.
And
Oh, and we
as long as
reference
that
that.
section
Yeah,
covers.
okay, I think that would be fun, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right, all right. And then the part where it says the department shall, yeah, sorry, that was, that was, it's okay. Because no changes were necessary.
That was a conclusion of these slides.
So, and you're probably looking at multiple versions.
I am.
So on line 17, where it starts, the department shall conduct, I think that we don't want to duplicate something that the department does.
Okay.
So we don't want it to be something separate per se, so
Shall include
Um,
within its review
within its-
process.
review process, yeah, something like that.
Okay.
The, elements of the operation of BT-HAR or BHAR.
Okay, this is your subsection C. So I just rewrote this just before I came up. I put a separate section together that is department duties. This is one of the duties, and I cross-referenced the existing requirement in 3 VSA chapter 59 to do a designation process, and I talked about any redesignation that's required shall include making sure that there's compliance with this chapter.
Okay, and so, as part of that, I know yesterday we talked about some changes to that title. And we still do want some changes to that title.
Mhm.
But there's a broader discussion and decision that when we said change OEO to department, that's a bigger discussion. That's a bigger organizational discussion than we're going to undertake here. So we switch that back to OEO. There may very well be something that happens within the Agency of Human Services, but we are not dictating that in this. And so we received feedback that makes the appearance that we did do that, and that's not our intent.
Yeah, okay, I will undo that.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now, all right, so then now let's return to top of page 9. We're getting there, people. So these are some basics infrastructure, ability to meet reporting requirements, community connections with other providers. What are the other things that we feel like should be as part of this list of things that a community action agency should, in the carrying out of these duties, be able to do?
Was this list intended to be in carrying out the duties or in identifying the group that would, the regional resource organization that would do the work? I mean, it seems like this list is this is a list of things we know the CAPs already have.
Yeah.
They already have the infrastructure, the connections with community.
We can't, because the Agency of Human Service, we want to make sure that there may be disagreements about whether an existing community action agency or a future community action agency is carrying out the capacity that these are outlined. So what we're saying as a basic capacity, these are things that need to exist. And yes, we presume that the current ones have these things.
But I think that, we don't presume that they have these things to the degree and capacity to support
This,
VR.
right.
So this, I think, is specific that they have the infrastructure to do this to the degree required for V. And which I think by the fact that it's a review of their ability to, because of A, I think that this, what's currently B123 really is incorporated as not their overall ability, but their infrastructure and so forth to do this additional specific work.
Well, and here remember, we're talking about what the department does. Okay, so the department is
Oh, right.
authorizing. So
Right,
this
right.
is contained under a new section that's called whatever Katie called it, but department duties, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're saying
Department shall ensure that these
that these things exist.
exist within the community action agencies that have been designated or another agency that if.
That this is the part where it doesn't say that anywhere yet, I don't think. Not yet. Yeah.
Is there any concern about the timing of this? If we think that the community action agencies generally have these things that we're listing in 1, 2, 3, but then the question is, do they have them specific to the question of working on homelessness issues? Will they have it on day one when they need to be designated to start this next 1 year of planning? Or is it something they will be building out to ensure they have in place by the time they're operationalizing these?
That will be part of this planning process over the next year. I mean, they may in fact need to, any one of them may in fact need to build out a better capacity to have subgrants with other organizations, for instance, or some method of, I don't know, I can't think of
Seeing
all
what
of
their
it.
staffing needs to be.
Seeing what their staffing
Up
needs.
staffing,
Yeah.
yeah.
If they have that need to build out, and we expect that they will, does that prevent the department from designating them or naming them or whatever? Because that will happen towards the beginning of this process, I would assume, right? The department will make the designation.
It doesn't come into effect until 2026, right? Or is this under?
We might have to change some in the,
Effective date.
Yeah.
in the.
Well, and I'm also thinking it says existing, so it could say existing or planned.
Yeah.
Because they may need
To plan some.
and
of
some
the-
may not, some may have a sufficient infrastructure, so I think we should probably say existing or planned, yeah.
Do we want to talk about coordinated entry here?
We do,
Is it there? Sorry.
line 7.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Oh, there it is.
We should say housing providers too,
Subdivision.
yeah, in that in number 3.
Three.
Okay, so. So remember, we're talking about the department's responsibilities. Are there things that we think that are basic to a community action agency in performing these duties for VHART? Other than 1, 2, and 3, which is having the infrastructure and all that entails, having the ability to meet the department's requirements, and having community connections with other providers in the region.
Well, yeah, when it comes to reauthorization, which is a part of this, I assume that they're gonna, the department would be like, are they actually doing what they're supposed to be doing? This is only the capacity. Doesn't there have to be, isn't that review process, which they already do?
Right,
But they said if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, that kicks in a process where they might be designated. So it seems we have to say something. You might have all these capacities, but actually not fulfilling them. Having the ability to meet is different from actually doing it.
no, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I think that's covered in the concept of the department, what the department's supposed to be doing, which is, the quality oversight, and are you carrying out the duties?
Oh, okay, we haven't gotten through that part yet.
Well, this piece, and it's gonna be, I think it would be probably called something different, where it says the department shall conduct a redesignation review.
Oh, yeah, right.
I think it'd be something, it'll look different than that, but,
Okay, that's distinct from B, which is what they have to have as infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
The
Yeah.
kind of accountability and the redesignations needs to kind of be pulled out.
Yeah, it needs to be.
it's gonna be a separate thing.
Exactly.
Right, so it doesn't look like that's all that gets reviewed.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so, Katie, in that first intro paragraph, where it says the department shall conduct a redesignation review, I'm sure that we'll get feedback from the department about what that's actually called, but, we just, the department's responsibility are for quality monitoring and oversight. And, that's essentially what we want to convey, and that they have to do that. And I don't see any reason to have a different process unless we hear otherwise from the department or the community action agencies than what is being carried out now.
Yeah, the only difference is that they're obviously also looking at these
And this is
services
like adding
along
another
with.
program.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
yeah, of course.
I know they'll ask me. Amy Schulberger for the record. So right now, the annual work plan and the 3-year needs assessment is approved by OEO.
Mhm.
And so I think how DCF would approve only this part of their needs, like, are they approving the whole needs assessment because it includes all of their work that they do? I don't know if I'm making sense.
Well, yeah, I think, I'm trying to not get into the organizational issue that people have with OEO and DCF. So I honestly that's not something we're gonna take up
I
here.
just think it's important to be clear about what the responsibility of the CATS is to submit to whom. That's all I'm like, so they're clear about, and maybe if we just.
If they are submitting it to OEO, they're submitting it to DCF.
As long as that's what you think, then we're good.
Until OEO returns to being its own office outside of a department, which isn't likely to happen, that's what we need. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on to what the department should do in terms of consulting with the community action agencies to develop appropriate resource allocations. And we probably got feedback on this, but for now, this says, economic rate of homelessness, rental vacancy rates, other variables. And then I did add something in my notes about the use of existing data whenever possible. So I know that there is data that is currently used in the resource allocation process. Again, we're not trying to recreate things that exist already. So if we're able just to encourage the use of existing available
Maybe we could say available. The problem with existing is that this lives on.
Oh, yeah, right.
But we could say available
Available.
data or historic data.
It's not always historic. I don't know.
Okay, so available
Just
data.
available, yeah.
Yeah, it says as appropriate.
Yeah. Okay, where in here do we say what this? Just a minute, I'm just looking at,
Oh, there's
to see, it might come into this. Um. Okay, I guess maybe it comes into under appropriation, no, because that's just the $10 million. Oh, okay, future appropriations. All right,
I'm seeing now D is what I was raising. D is the, for review. On that. Quality oversight.
accountability.
Yeah, the
oversight,
accountability is in D there.
Yeah.
But we're still on two, sorry.
We're still on two. The reason I was moving, because we were talking, because it talks about funding in
Yep.
this next one, and so what I was, so what I was, what this does is, in current discussions, community action agencies would prefer that an individual allocation be made to each community action agency. However, in the event that the development of the partnership, community action partnership, more fully develops, I guess I would say, sort of akin to what we did with the parent-child centers, and their network, where the department issues one grant award to the network, and then the network decides how it's disseminated, you know, based on criteria, but decides how it's disseminated among themselves. So at the current juncture, folks don't want to do that, but they would like to leave that as a possibility of potential in the future. So that's what that language is supposed to represent. Does that seem clear to people? Now, where I was getting hung up a little bit is, how do we exactly say what our intentions are about? I know, that's why I was jumping ahead to well, let's just put a placeholder here for, I feel like we need to say what monies we're intending for them to allocate.
Mhm. Right, because it's not.
What existing monies
Yeah.
we're intending for them to allocate. And I know that we reference sources of funding and, you know, intention in the last section, but
We have discussion yet to sort out.
right, I feel like, I mean, I know it's a minimum of what is been utilized in the GA, and then I think we should have some discussion about where it's the whole GA program or just the GA emergency housing. There's not much left in the GA program if you outside of that, and these are the agencies that deal with poverty issues, which is what the rest of the GA program is dealing with. So I'm in favor of doing the whole GA, but and the housing opportunity. But there very well could be others. She can bring the baby in.
Yeah.
Yes, bring the baby in.
love
Is Baby gonna be on the record now?
Of course. I forgot her name.
Josephine.
Jonathan, yes, thank you.
She's waiting.
She's welcome here anytime. And you are too, Nellie.
But as the committee with childcare jurisdiction.
Yeah.
We welcome babies all the time.
Yeah, we are. We welcome you anytime.
Oh, she's a little fussy, so I'm not gonna disrupt things in
All
here.
right.
Thank you all.
Alrighty. Okay. So so I just was talking about the housing opportunity funds and the GA funds, but there may very well be other funds that should or could be that, you know, we all have not spent a lot of time talking to. So I would want to give the flexibility for those funds to be included in this grant, in this BHARF as well. And I'm gonna look to you over there on the corner, Amy. So DCEF, OEO, Economic Services, whichever part of DCF you want to talk about. they historically, for sort of like for every little program, they put out another grant award, and then another grant award, and then there's another grant award. And the designated agencies and the PCCs don't operate that way. You know, they have a master grant essentially, and all of the funding is being allocated out to them, comes under that master grant. So I don't want to complicate things, but it seems as though that's at least one thing that should be considered in the advisory.
Is that a question?
Is that something that they are open to considering? That makes it a question.
So, first I just want to clarify, the parent-child centers get dozens of grants.
Well,
DCF.
yeah, not the base grants. Oh, that's true. Yeah,
For different programming.
you know,
So I just wanna say that that's, not.
All right, thank you.
The second thing I would say is the CAPS aren't actually supporting the advisory committee, they have a counter proposal. So I think it would be hard for me to answer whether.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. Thank you. So I think at a minimum, we should put in here in this section where it's talking about allocating resources, that the intention is, at a minimum, it would be the, general assistance and the, what is currently known as general, or you don't want to use currently, what is,
Yeah.
however.
I see what you're trying to do, and my concern is that as soon as this takes effect, then GA emergency housing is a thing of the past. So it feels, I don't
That's the
know.
intent.
Right, so it feels uncomfortable to put something in the green books going forward referencing programs and funds that don't exist anymore. That's why I put it in the session law. So I have some concerns about putting it in the green books.
Well, I guess the question is if you think it's clear.
What if we put a purpose section at the beginning of the chapter? And we would put in the purpose section, just what you're thinking, that this is meant to be a replacement of these programs, and any funds previously attributed to those programs would be used for this moving forward, something like that.
I want to give the option of any other, I mean, yes, that's the general purpose.
Okay.
And maybe we can do this under the, or whatever we end up with in terms of transition process. That's also a role for the transition process to identify any other sources of funds that should be included in the program.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, D. On page 9. This is develop appropriate measures and methods of accountability. Is that sufficient? Okay. Anybody have any feedback about that? Okay. Needs assessments. Okay, thank you. Title 3, Chapter 59, I wrote on this. Oh,
Yeah, this is
the
where we need
community
to
services
combine
plan.
it with their existing.
Yeah. So maybe what we say here is to reference back to Title 3. And to say to include in that these items or whatever we end up agreeing to in terms of that. Do you know what I'm saying? Instead of as written here, we're saying it sounds like it's its own needs assessment, and what we're saying is to include it as the regional needs assessment.
Okay. So I have, as part of the plan required pursuant to 3 VSA chapter 59, that they would be doing a needs assessment as part of the existing plan. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, another committee needs me. I
Yes, I know, I know you have.
I may be back.
Okay. You need something, Eric?
No, I was gonna send something on.
Okay, okay.
We know if that timing aligns, if it's going to align with the other needs assessments being done.
Yeah,
We built out that timeline.
they won't say that date in there. It'll just be consistent with what's required to, yeah. Oh, here, Samuel, I wrote it someplace that we didn't, on the, I'm on the top of page 11 now. We might really actually be able to start on comments tomorrow. I have it on the top of, page 11. Each regional resource organization shall submit plans developed to, we don't want those plans. I mean, we are very grateful that they're being done, but
No.
this would be under the role of the department. We want essentially a roll up, we want a summary of the needs and resources needed to fulfill those needs. Well, we can always ask for each individual regions, but unless somebody disagrees with that, do you want to see the 5 different regional
I do.
plans?
Do you want them to come in and?
Would you want to?
Testify?
This means everything.
Yeah, no, I want it to be available. But
Yeah.
I'm always interested in that
Okay.
kind of thing, so,
What
I
did-
think the one report, like have it summarized and.
yeah.
aggregated.
Level.
Yeah, department responsibility, okay. Well, I didn't, catch what you said.
Would we put here or is it not necessary here to have them come in and, you know, that they would report annually? Sort of do it at a high level rather than say, here are your 5 reports. And would they come in, require them to come in annually or whatever that might be for the first 3 years to give us a report?
I think sort of transitional check-ins about how, this is sort of a major transformation. And transition, I think major check-ins like that would require, and that might be something that isn't on an ongoing nature, but I think that's a good idea, Doug. I'm not sure if it would be right here, but I hold on to that thought. I think we should add that. I think we should add that here. So the next section is use of hotel and motel rooms. And I have no idea if this, this is the appropriate place or the section, but I know that Brenda had some questions and wanted to make sure that they needed to meet life safety. I mean, I know you were looking for somebody to inspect them every 30 days or something, but I don't think that's economically feasible, to be honest. Within, I think the Department of Health would tell you that they have insufficient staff to be able to do that. But you can check on it if you want to.
Who would I check with?
Look it up if you go to the Vermont Department of Health's website, you should be able to find licensing division or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but
Okay.
double check there and tell them that you're interested in them doing checks every 30 days and see what they say.
And another thing, do they do job coaching and require residents to look for jobs?
Those are
Buy
things
them
that,
clothes for interviews and
yeah, those are things that would be,
life skills.
yeah, those are things that would be available in the 2nd and 3rd levels of the shelter program, yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's good because it'll give them like something to look forward to, like, and proud of themselves.
And help people connect with places like Hireability, which is our voc rehab and other job assistance organizations. Hireability has a specific program for people with substance use disorders, for instance. So yeah, that's where those referrals and connections would be made.
And that's already in there.
It is in here, yeah.
Yay. Thanks.
Neil, that's been in my head for a month and a half now. I knew at some point I was gonna call you Neil because your last name is Nielsen. Todd.
Brenda's comment.
Yeah.
I know for a fact, I don't think, when I was working, I worked at Harper Place and they had weekly unannounced room checks. How the place is immaculate.
Yeah, you know why? Because it is, not run by a hotel. It's run as a shelter.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. That's what we're trying to, that is what we're trying to
Trying to
create.
pull it all together.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. I think Dan had his hand up. Oh, I thought it was like this. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
And so that, that really ties into, comment I wanted to make about, B, letter B. And just to throw it out there for, opportunity for rebuttal. I'm sorry, beginning line 16 on page 11. And I'm really looking at 18, 19, 20. You know, the fact that they may enter into a contract for use of blocks that would provide for case management and so forth. When I think about the one study that we were referred to and saw on how hotel motel versus congregate is like clearly better outcomes and so forth. They were comparing and looking at a program where, because of COVID, you know, the service organizations rented a block or a piece of a hotel and provided their services there. They weren't like renting individual scattered rooms. And it seems to me that it would be better in terms of expectations to basically be saying that that's how they should function. If they're using hotel and motel rooms, it should be that they shall enter, shall may be too strong, but they shall enter into contracts for the use of blocks of motels and hotels. And then when it's talking about, and shall use per room per night for exigent circumstances only. We gotta be really limiting to the kind of, okay, for a couple of nights while we're sorting out whatever, but these very sparse use on an emergency basis for individual, as opposed to really pushing for, when we need to use this, we ought to be doing it by contracts for a floor or a block of rooms or whatever amount might be. The local agency is gonna see they're gonna need.
That they're essentially able to then run as a
Yes,
shelter, if you will.
yes,
Mhm.
exactly. They negotiate for the conditions of use, access for providers, then they are gonna be inspected. It's just like a shelter. They're gonna be involved, they're gonna be able to verify that the conditions are being maintained, because it's gonna be a wing or something that they're functioning in, and that, and I'm not saying you can't ever do it, kind of the older way, but that should be really minimized to when it's the only way. And
I'm a little hesitant to say that that's the only way, and I know that's not exactly what you're saying.
yeah,
but-
except for exigent circumstances.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if we should say the community action, say, yeah.
Rather than shall.
She won't say should. And shall be encouraged is probably not, good either.
It's not always possible to.
Right.
There are some hotels
Right.
I know there that who will do one room, at a time.
When possible, you
Yeah.
can also do it when
And
possible.
I do wanna, like, people,
Yeah.
there are services in these hotels. It varies around the state, but there is this like narrative that if we're just throwing people and they're gone. A lot of these places, there are service providers who are on site. It's not so I just wanna,
No,
and then working well.
They just don't have the responsibility,
I think the
I
more that
guess.
it can be done in
It
a
is not
planned way.
equitable around the state,
No.
but there's some great models that are actually happening here.
And that's what we want to
yeah.
support and encourage.
Right.
The more we can work towards that kind of a model,
It's hard for service providers and case managers to hear us talk like that, because so I'm just recognizing their work because
yeah,
they're doing.
I know, I
it.
appreciate that. But there are also places where people actually
absolutely.
won't go into, and, oh, no, I'm
some people won't go in.
Well, that's true. That's true. Some people won't go into. That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
And I have brought my toddler daughter into them and had a blast. So
Yeah.
I felt perfectly safe.
I know. I know.
Yeah, I sent it.
Struggle.
Hopefully they'll get back to me.
Okay, you found it? Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
I already sent it.
Thank you. Okay, so, I think we do want to prioritize that. So why don't we move that to the first thing, I guess, and maybe have these be two separate things.
Mhm.
We're back to us taking notes again. Sorry.
Well, I mean, we can sit on it a little also in terms of. how
Well,
we
yeah,
might-
I'm just,
how
in
we
terms
might
of what we look
word
at
it.
in next draft, that's
Yes,
all we're talking about right now.
In terms of how we
Yeah.
say, this is the preferred. It's preferred when possible, and then when necessary.
Yeah.
To the perimeter.
I mean, I recognize that we have people going into hotels all the time. I think that the difference here is that they're going into an individual hotel room, and if there is, and they don't have the authority to be there as a provider,
Accessible provider who's,
who is looking at this space as essentially under their control as opposed to under the hotel's control. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, advisory committee. I understand we've received a bunch of feedback about advisory committee. So let's just talk about the concept for right now. Yeah, go ahead.
I like the number one, 5 individuals with lived experience of homelessness. I do want to ensure whatever model we take of creating this implementation, whether it's more regionally, statewide, how it does, I want to ensure that there continues to be a large representation of the people with lived experience who these programs will affect. I don't think any program we can create or implement will not truly be effective in this state unless we
nothing
centralize it
about us
without us. So
I heard him quoting it. It's been so much a part of the disability
Mhm.
community
Yeah,
for so
yeah.
long. It was like, oh, listen, national TV, he's saying
He's
about
saying it.
Ukraine and the peace.
yeah, well,
Nothing about us without us.
intersection.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
transformative, yes, so, yeah, just putting that out there.
Okay, so what are people's thoughts? I'll tell you what I was thinking, at least, so you understand what the sort of process that went through my head. Was one, to have a significant enough membership of people with lived experience on it. One, so that there's a peer support, sort of built-in peer support.
Yeah.
And so that the multiple voices are heard. And the second was the organizations who are going to be tasked with doing this, because this is an implementation, the way it's set up right now, implementation advisory committee. And then the third was to impress upon that this is not only a responsibility of DCF, it really is an AHS responsibility. And so, is looking to, all the other commissioners and stuff that we had parade before us, and none of whom use coordinated entry, and and several of whom, anyway, I don't need to characterize their testimony. We all heard it. It was not inclusive. Let's just put it that way. They were living in their own silos, and yes, they may have gone in to do an assessment, but we heard the Commissioner of Corrections say, we place people out of correctional facilities into hotels as a placement. That's not an appropriate placement.
They cannot designate them, they gotta go through to receive that general into the hotel, they'd have to go through their coordinated entry or be eligible for that. I find it difficult to believe that the Department of Corrections is funding and placing people in a hotel. And if you're listening, corrections, that's not appropriate if you are.
I
Well,
have
inpatients-
people getting out of the correction.
Yeah, they've, I have no idea.
Having place to go.
I have no idea if they're funding it, but they, no, I was just referring to what Eric said. I have no idea if they're funding it, but the commissioner, out of his own words, said that we place people into hotels. And it may have been people who have served out their whole sentence.
Right. No,
Mhm.
well, it's the same with inpatient psychiatric facilities discharge people to homelessness who then, this is where they end up. So it may be paid for or whatever system. but-
Hospitals have
but
been
they're-
discharging people to hotels.
But,
Everybody's doing it.
but I had to have a room before they were let go. Like when I did hospital
Corrections, yeah,
and I did corrections,
yeah.
I had to have a space. It's
Yeah.
not like they sent them out and said, you don't have a place on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
And this is 10 years ago, it's probably changed.
yeah. So that was the thinking behind this, to get other departments in AHS to be part of the solution, taking ownership of part of their systems and responsiveness of their systems. And, anyways, that's it.
With respect to the makeup of the advisory committee, I'm trying to piece together all of the different testimony that we heard, the continuum of care organizations.
Mm-hmm. They're in here, coordinated entry.
They had input about involvement, but now we get that's getting beyond our.
That's when it says a representative of the coordinated entry agency in Chittenden County, that's referring to the.
Yep, and then a representative,
Organization.
yes, and the balance of state.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Oh, and I did have a question about this, like 5 individuals with lived experience of homelessness appointed by the lead coordinated entry agency. There's a lead agency for each. There's like,
Is it?
Yeah.
yeah, there's, yeah.
Yeah, I know, so it's not worded right, but I knew that's what I meant. So they would have to get together and decide who to nominate.
Okay, yeah, so that's probably,
total.
okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wrote agencies on mine.
Would be one from each agency.
well, that
No,
would
'cause
be,
there's
that would
probably
give us
12.
way more than 5, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, 13, because we'd have done that.
yeah. No, I had an IES on here, KG list. It's plural. They would have to get together and decide who and where from.
So in concept, I agree with this.
Mhm.
I think that it is a good idea to have a advisory group that has all the players come together and
It's just not all the players. I want to acknowledge that.
For many of the stakeholders.
Yeah,
Come together to work on implementation and advisement on how this should be implemented. But then I'm reading the comments from the
Mhm.
community action agencies, and they feel a little different. Like what they're saying is have it be more regional, like have regional groups that do an implementation plan regionally. And I'm trying to balance those two things because my gut goes to what we have set out to
I would
do.
say that, I think that is a second step.
I was just gonna say,
Regional subcommittee.
yeah, so I think that's what I'm saying, like, this feels like a different thing than what we're.
I agree with that,
Yeah.
but I think that's the second
That's
step.
next, right?
Yeah.
They should always be having an
Right,
advisory
regional, yeah,
committee regionally, yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
I don't
think we need
disagree with
both,
that, but
yeah.
yeah.
Because this is time limited to the implementation and transition.
Yes.
Not
right.
beyond that.
Well, I think there also needs to be that regional
Right, which we
implementation,
don't have right
transition,
now, yeah.
planning as well before the rollout. So I do think there needs to be that higher level,
Yeah.
especially incorporating, so we don't have this siloed system anymore. 'Cause the thing we've heard over and over again, to really meet the acuity of the needs we are seeing in the state right now is we need all of those. So I agree they need to be part of that, but a lot of the actual work on how this will look and, how the funds are needed and the plans, is also really depends on that. So I think,
Yeah, I think both are needed. I
don't want this to be seen as like just an after the second thing, because I also think that is a
So
truly
their
important
comment says rather
part
than
of-
statewide advisory committee.
Yeah, but
That's not, yeah.
That's
So we
nice
need
feedback,
both.
but yeah, we
need
need to
both.
go with that recommendation. I think that, and then I guess I'm gonna leave this to Amy to bring back, about whether they actually want that in statute or not.
The regional
Yeah.
planning groups.
Because this is, you know, how we intend to sort of implement a statewide program. And if they want something like that in statute, I mean, I'm happy to put it in statute.
It might be special. Can I ask a question,
Yeah.
clarifying question?
Yeah.
I think what I'm not clear on is who does that advisory committee advise? Because if your goal is for coordination in the administration, but they're advising the CAPS on how to carry out the program, it's confusing. And also, I think the CAPS also had a bit of a reaction to only having two of them on the committee when they are meant to be responsible for the entire.
I know, I was trying to balance it.
And also, they're not leading the committee, but they're somehow having to take the advice of, but it's just confusing about how the interaction works. So if you could just clarify that, that would be helpful.
And I would also just like to figure, I don't know if we can actually do it, but ensure when we're doing this commissioner or designee, we don't run into the same situation we ran in with the task force where we have this block who would not, just abstained. And that was not useful. What's the point of if that's going to happen?
It's also always a struggle with balance and the ability to participate. There's 16 people on
Exactly.
now, and it does seem really imbalanced in terms of the number of, just state departments and all that who all need to be there, but then don't want to cut back on folks with lived experience, need all those key community pieces. It just makes it really tough to get everybody that you'd like to have there and also having a functioning group, which
All right, so
at a certain number.
This is like getting super big and probably not, but I think of like the Commission on the Future of Education, where they have the commission, but then they have these subcommittee parts that,
Well, I was wondering about that regional
There's something that
subcommittees.
prevents.
Yeah.
Reasonable, regional subcommittees would make a lot of sense right from the get-go.
I mean, AHS used to have something similar to this before COVID, where they had a big, large group of stakeholders and they had a plan to end homelessness by 2025. So, Paul Dragon was part of that group. And that was a very large group, but that had, this is before, obviously,
they
it was
still do
not
extensive,
integrated. Yeah,
it's kind of
now through
and
the
they do
COCs.
a regular,
There's the
Yeah,
governor's
and then the
council
governor's-
too.
so that we,
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, they are working on it, but some of the recommendations come out, but.
With respect to this structure, I think it's an interesting and valid point about the role that the CAP should have in this if ultimately they're being asked to manage all of it. I wonder if we designate the chair as coming from one of the CAPs and a vice chair to come from a vice chair who is neither from the CAPs or from a state agency.
And that's kind of modeling it after the opioid settlement.
yeah,
A little bit, like saying
yeah.
the chair is.
Let's think about that. I honestly, I think, that's, I'm just trying to, what I'm trying to think about is how this operationally will work, okay? And, so thinking about ones that we know about, the one most recently is the opioid settlement committee. The commissioner is a non-voting member. He's the chair, but we just put in that you need to have a co-chair or vice chair or whatever from the voting representation. I feel just a little bit differently about this because we actually are creating a transformation about how government works. And I feel like they are giving advice to the government as well as to the agencies.
The CAPs, right.
Yeah. And so I feel like there needs to be, I feel like there does need to be leadership within the government. Maybe as well as the caps. I feel it's, and maybe it's not set up. Well, maybe we are not providing advice to the caps in this. Maybe this is providing advice to the, yeah, that's.
Well, that's what, because we're saying in this regarding the design, implementation and transition to, who's designing and implementing it? The system.
Well, we're doing the outline of a design and the implementation is being done jointly
With
With
DCF and the cap.
DCF and the
And that's,
caps.
and the statute clearly spells out that they are designing the implementation jointly. I'm just wondering where we actually say that,
Yeah, agreed.
so that we then say, oh, now you're gonna revise them on this, but I'm not sure we're clear on.
I just don't want it to be the department
No, I agree, but
designing something that then nobody can implement and, having all these people provide input, but they don't have a,
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just
Say.
thinking we somehow need more clarity tying that to who does have responsibility for design and implementation planning.
well, if we have this committee providing advice to the department and to the community action agencies, doesn't that de facto say that they're responsible for
Yeah,
providing it?
regarding, I mean, it says
They're
here
doing it
regarding the
well.
design, implementation and transition to the
I feel
Vermont.
like it's clear, but if you don't feel like it's clear, then propose something different, yeah. Think about that, if you want to.
Yeah, yeah,
If it's not clear to
this
you.
is talking about the advisory committee. It's not talking about the actual implementation. And we talked before about some of these pieces where we want to hear back, they're supposed to flesh out the elements for the services. We talked about minimum
Right, so this is
standards
just a
and all that.
makeup, and I think that we do need to add a section on what are the things that we want
Who's-
them to report back.
Who's going to determine what those elements should be?
In the end, who's gonna have the decision-making authority? We're gonna, if we have specific things that we want to see in there,
Mhm.
then we should be putting them in statute.
But they're not going to be in statute here. I mean, who's going to, when we talk about, we're putting in statute the broad, here are the areas that need to be. But we also wanted to hear back the minimum standards that would be, based on different, the minimum standards might be different for one thing
Right.
or
The
another.
department's determining those.
Okay, that was my question. So the
Yes.
department's going to determine those.
Mhm.
So if the department has to make those determinations, wouldn't the advice and recommendations for how to be doing that be to the departments
Well, that's what I was
It is,
starting to
though.
say.
rather than the,
By that, I wasn't following. So what is,
So for instance, required elements, I'll give you, for instance, the shelter standards. Okay, there are some things that are responsibility of state government to produce so that there's equity across, or at least the approach at equity across the whole state. So what the standards are that shelters need to abide by. That's something that the department's going to do. That's not something that the community action agencies are going to do.
Okay.
So they have to either themselves or through their sub-grant agreements abide by the state's shelter guidelines or shelter standards. So there will be standards, for shelter. If we had talked about having, potential standards for case management
exactly,
services.
that's one, yeah.
Right. Those standards will be set. I would expect and want them to be working with the people who are going to be implementing this in order to be setting these things. And I think, people said we didn't want to throw out the shelter standards because there was a lot of work done by a lot of collaboration with people in the field to develop those, and wasn't our intent to get rid of them. But there are some things that maybe don't have sufficient guidance. I don't know if there are sufficient standards for case management and what that includes and.
And what should apply to what. Yeah, so, yeah.
I guess I'm also wondering about questions as far as this implementation and the work of the advisory committee. Are they also addressing things as broad as of all of the funds we have available, we envision, just make up a number, 15% or 20% will go to extreme weather shelters. We envision that we want to allocate roughly 15% towards emergency rental assistance to ensure that those who are precariously housed do not fall into homelessness. Sort of broad swaths of how this will be executed.
Who should be doing that? I'm sorry, I'm
That's
asking.
what I'm asking. Who, is this the advisory?
No, that's
committee?
about, no. Those are decisions made at the local level. You have to have all of these elements. How much, it could be, that could vary from region to region.
Okay,
That's that part where it's talking about based on what they think the needs are.
Yes.
Right.
okay.
Yeah, that could, that's, I honestly don't want the state to be setting.
Well, I wasn't necessarily saying the state, but I didn't know if that was the work of the advisory committee, but I'm hearing, and it makes sense to me that that's looked at regionally as the CAP set out to do their work.
Yeah. And that honestly, the, whatever you're reading from there, from the CAPS, feedback, and the more I'm thinking about this, I'm just wondering if this section should be modified to be giving advice to this agency of human services. Or to the, I don't know, but to the state. At the,
Administration.
to the administration about that level. You know what I'm saying? And then,
And then these regional.
and then these regional ones would be giving advice how it's implemented at the local level. Um,
The regional ones.
because the department, I mean, we're creating the program, the department, we task state government. We work through the executive branch to implement the policies that we create. The executive branch then works through community partners to implement that. So it probably does make sense. I'm just kind of talking out loud. It probably does make sense to have this statewide advisory committee be giving advice to the department in the
agency.
the agency, maybe, yeah. And then incorporate this.
What, to the agency of human services or to the agencies that are operating?
No,
No,
human
the
services.
agency,
Human services.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of looking at this from a different perspective because of a possible transition that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
With all due respect, I don't need an advisory council directing how to go about it. If they want to put something together with the state, that's fine. But the second piece is, and this may probably not germane to the conversation.
Eric, you always need advice. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, but I would love to know how many advisory committees are currently in place.
This one is time limited. It expires
No, but I mean,
at the local level.
through for the 3 years that I've been up here, I think every
Oh, it's
bill
state
that
government. It
has
is.
been put together has an advisory
It
committee
does.
attached to it. After a while, it becomes, it gets cumbersome. It's
I don't disagree. I think
in
it's,
this case, it's
I
warranted.
some
Yeah.
do.
It's just like another
I mean,
layer.
opioid advisory
okay, one
committee
person at a
is
time, please.
Very effective.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna.
So I think it depends, and it depends how they're set up. And I think, when we're creating a new program, when there's going to be a lot of unknowns and a lot of things that we don't have the time to think about and question and explore, I think a limited time advisory committee with people who are on the ground doing the work and bringing the different state agencies together so they're not so siloed can be really effective.
Yeah, and, each area and each thing's gonna have different perspectives. What, is a need maybe in Rutland may not be the same need that's in Chittenden.
Which is
So
why we're going
that
to.
brings up
Well, we
my,
need this regional subcommittees,
Yeah.
regional committees, yeah.
And when we created the statute for designated agencies and the standing committees, and we'll remember that. If they had a board of directors that satisfied the requirements of that committee already, in that case, it was a majority membership of those individuals served or family members. That qualified. So in this implementation process, they may come back and say, well, we have an advisory committee that is representative of the region. We'll add more people with lived experience and will that suffice? And we'll say, well, probably sounds like it, maybe.
Yeah, right, there's a state standing committee for adult mental health, children's mental health, and developmental disabilities. And they also have then a local standing committee that works with each of those agencies.
Okay, so.
Cover the state, so it's kind of that same model.
All right, so I'm summarizing, and we're getting into the close here. I'm summarizing that we are going to keep this state level, time limited advisory committee. And they are going to advise the Agency of Human Services in essentially the creation, implementation, and of the broad program. And then we will insert something similar, the regional, and we should have language in there that if they have something that's already existing, that they can expand or modify, that will work.
Can I just, I would be remiss under the compensation and reimbursements, see that's limited to 12 meetings. I would love to hear for all the people out there, if they feel that will be enough. And I also just want to leap back to those members we have with lived experience. What happened in the task force, because we were so limited by our number of meetings, we had to just make all day meetings. So we had 7-8 hour meetings, and we had people with lived experience who were then only getting that $50. And when you break that down, that is less than minimum wage. And so I'm not, that's a whole other thing to chew. I have a short form bill, but people should be making, especially when they're not there, being paid under other organizations and providing incredible value to our state and its future, that they be paid a fair wage.
Within the last couple of years, there was I thought there was actually a work group or study committee. It was a very, very active discussion about, among other things, you go to a 1 hour meeting versus an all day meeting, it's the same. There's a lot of disparity in it. And there was a bill and a discussion, I think primarily in the Senate. And I think at that time, the intent was it was either a bill that said we're going to come back or something.
Yeah.
And I think we need to, I don't know why that didn't continue. Maybe the person who was most persistent about it ended up not coming back.
One of the
But it's been
things
dropped.
is like how that affects if their eligibility for benefits and things like that. I know that has been a huge discussion. I'm in a lot of discussions around like youth, whether it's stipends, things like that. I can share, there's like a nationwide homelessness law project. It's been working on this a lot and there's breakdowns of each state on how things like stipends and what needs to happen to pay people fairly. So I can share that.
It is a big,
And
And we should
it's
share
just
it with our
something
government operations.
I
committee.
want to just highlight and we'll continue to highlight until we rectify
And
it
I want to say, it's not 12 meetings total, it's annually, it's once a month.
annually.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, especially in this initial phase,
Yeah.
Maybe
there,
like
it
18
might
at least,
be,
maybe, I don't know.
yeah, or there is a way for them, a clear defined process for them to
Oh.
request and receive more, with the, maybe they have to provide why, but, this expectation that if needed, more will be approved.
Go ahead,
I'm
Brady.
on the select board in Milton,
Yeah.
and we get 50 a meeting, but we set our meetings to 6 to 9. Maybe something like that, have specific times, and then a set amount. It works for us. We've done it for years. So we do 50 a meeting, 6 to 9. We do run over sometimes.
But if as a time limited group with an intensive mission, they probably need more time than that, which is where it gets into the difference, yeah.
I think there's a comment to that, unless let's set forth an approval process that's right in the statute so that it's not
If it doesn't have more, I think.
well, we ran into this. We tried to get additional compensation for the task force, and we couldn't get it, so.
And I just want to, are we okay? Does it work for who's appointing whom? I mean, there's there's a problem developing around, if you have a group that's appointing somebody, and then there ends up with a fight over who's the right group to appoint them. So, you know, the five
I'm sure,
experience,
I'm sure we'll get feedback about it.
well, you may not, because the people who have the concern might not be around the table. So I guess I'm looking at people with lived experience appointed by the coordinated entry agency.
It doesn't matter to me who
We
they're
have,
from.
we'd have to figure it out. I'll talk with Frank more. There are lived experience committees within the COCs.
And that,
And so I'm thinking appointed by them. I'm
Exactly.
sure CCHA has as well. I'm not as familiar with their inner workings, but I'm pretty sure they have one as well. Or it's information, so figuring out how we break that down, but I think they are the appropriate people to appoint the lived experience experts.
I'll say and more from Jubilee.
thank you,
Okay.
that's, yeah.
Okay, all right, now we are on, and that, by the way, at the bottom of page 13, that they on or before July 15th, 2025, that was the case for not 2026. We don't-
Oh, that'd be good,
We don't
yeah.
want them to wait a year
Yeah,
before they start,
Right.
right? Okay,
Question about attendance. Is there
Yeah.
ever been any precedence to set like especially for government employees or like minimum attendance requirements? I mean, I know for like community agency and that could be more challenging or people with lived experience, but if we're saying we want like the designee from DMH or Dale, that
They
there should
get
be
fined if
some-
they don't.
They only show up.
Requirements. Generator?
I don't know if that, I mean, we can check with Katie on that.
Yeah, I'm not
Oh.
gonna tackle that here. But I mean, I put down quorum because I didn't address quorum, and so there does need to be they do need to decide what's a quorum or a quorum. We can decide a quorum is the majority of those present, with at least representation from lived experience.
You know what
And
this,
I don't know, but there's, you won't have a quorum if the state people don't show up.
That's true.
no, you're reminding me, that makes me think of going back to B to membership. If different groups are being represented and are choosing representatives, it's not like that they're being appointed from, one source. I'm not sure how you reflect all of these diversity elements because there's one person
It
from
doesn't-
this, two
No,
from
no,
this.
no,
two
this
from
does
this.
not mean you need to have one person of color, one person.
No,
of
I
this,
understand
no.
that, but how do you make the membership reflect
Collectively.
growing
Yeah.
diversity collectively when they're being selected or appointed by different people and groups? I mean, for one thing, you've got half of them, all the state people are who
Let's
they
think on
are.
that one a little.
Yeah, I just,
Okay, section 5.
it's definitely a goal you want, but
Okay, transition plan.
Editing.
Okay, so,
Where is section 5?
Right here,
14.
page 14.
14?
Line 10.
it's the money.
Okay, show me the money, okay.
Don't need the money.
okay, so this was something that Brenda was asking about, so I just want to sort of like make sure I explain it to everybody. Okay?
She already did me, I'm all set.
Remember, this is, as I sort of said at the outset, that this is being based upon FY 25 appropriations, okay? In FY 25, we had one-time dollars appropriated. We want to assure that those, we had several costs of one-time dollars. The one-time dollars that I'm talking particularly of were appropriated to expand shelter services. The one-time dollars that I'm talking about in this bill are in the same exact amount that were in the governor's, that were in the budget that we're in right now, $10 million, but it's going towards the transition process for this major transformation in state government. This is not a minor thing. I think, I'm hoping that, I mean, I think the people who have been following this as closely as we've been working on it understand that it's a major transformation, but, hopefully we'll be able to convey that to our colleagues on the floor. It is going to require the assistance outside of state government, outside of existing community action resources, and other community partners, you know, most likely. So I just want to, that's what the purpose of this $10 million is. And I want to be clear that in this year's budget, we have 10 million in one time, going for shelter support. And in next year's budget, we're proposing this 10 million to be used for transition support during, the period of, trying to actualize what we end up with in this bill.
But actually, almost half of it's still for housing, for needs-specific housing. So we would not be funding any additional shelter support. This is in lieu, you're saying the 10
I'm
million.
open for feedback on this.
Yeah.
This
No,
was,
I'm just asking what your thought, your intent.
I was trying to incorporate things that the department also wants to do.
Okay,
That's that last part.
okay.
Okay. I think we've probably had enough for today. And we will have another, and the future appropriations on page 15. This is laying out the intent that I was just talking about,
Mhm.
that the intent is that this is based upon the appropriations that were in FY 25. Understanding that we can't make a commitment for the future
Mhm.
legislature, but we can put forth what the intent is. Okay? And
We
then,
just need to know what that money is.
yes,
Which we can do that, we get that. We get to that discussion.
so tomorrow, we will, I think probably Katie has been making modifications as we go along, so she'll have another draft.
I think we probably can skip reading.
You can skip
through
reading 2.1.
2.1.
Yeah, so she will have another draft that comes to us tomorrow, or probably later tonight, knowing Katie. And so we will take that draft, we'll review it for seeing if it's, you know, caught up to the comments that we think that we've made, and Katie's interpretation of that, and we will start to slog through the feedback that we've gotten. Okay, that's on tap for tomorrow. But we're not coming in early, so that's good. And it would be wonderful. I know. You're so disappointed, Eric. I know.
He was just complaining to me that we don't start at 7 AM.
Well, when we started at 8:30 on Tuesday, I got all sorts of havoc for it, you know, it's like, oh, I thought legislators didn't start till 10 on Tuesday. I'm like, no, not on crossover week. Okay, so I will make sure that we have received some
Another
additional,
one.
yes,
Yeah.
we've received additional feedback. I'm doing my best to make sure that that gets out to all of you. I'm gonna now do it electronically, Lori, so
Yeah, I printed the ones that came.
that came, yeah. Sometimes they CC Lori, those are the people who know what they're doing.
No, those who are listening.
Because my email is out of control right now and I'm searching down through to make sure that I have them, but I don't want to miss any feedback that we've gotten from people, okay?
Also know the regular players because they're referencing the specific version that they're coming.
Yeah.
This is very helpful.
Yes. Okay, folks, any comments, questions about what we're doing tomorrow?
Thank you. This is a lot. And
It is, it
for
is.
the new members.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so thanks for hanging in with us.
Eric, maybe why don't you just do a little brief overview of what we did downstairs
Yeah,
in
thank you.
House General? Just-
Oh, yeah, let me hear.
It was an interesting,
Interesting, you know, let me pull out, just in a, oh, you know, I didn't have the copy of the last page of the bill, so sorry. But in a nutshell, the housing, in general and housing, it had put, or was making a request for funding with inside their bill, looking to appropriate funds from the opioid settlement fund towards, recovery housing, And then 360,000 towards, what do you call it? The grants, and so forth. So
Just their base budget.
yeah, just their base budget. So putting money on in there. So we went down to just give them clarification of jurisdiction in regards to that and to make the request to obviously remove that from the bill, and then gave a little bit of a background on the advisory committee who's responsible for those recommendations. And I think we got a few things clarified. Well, I thought we did, but I want to go take a look at the last page.
I will. We'll look at the last page.
Does that sum it up?
Yeah, it does. I mean, people did not understand. They were responding to advocates. So, I mean, I'm just putting it out there. The advocates did a good job, and although they confused the committee because what was being asked for, some of it's already been provided in the budget. And so it was, anyways, if it stayed the way it was, it would have been provided twice in the budget. But long story short, we're still going to have to sort of, deal with making sure that people understand jurisdictional issues. And, it's nothing negative to be said about advocates trying to do it. It's just when you have changeover in committee leadership and structure, and lots of new members floating around this building, not understanding history about opioid settlement funds and all of that kind of stuff, these things happen. So in any event, I think, we succeeded in a little bit of education downstairs, and they succeeded in pushing the potential limits of their jurisdiction, shall we
We
say.
can't have the children going to a place, daddy, when mommy said no.
Yeah.
And we understand the confusion because again, it's the first year in which the opioid settlement money has been taken out of the big bill and been allocated into a separate fund and a separate bill within themselves. So of course, there's gonna be a learning curve. How about we call it that?
Exactly.
We'll call it a learning curve.
Yep. All righty. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work today. I know sitting through this and slogging through it, and then, tomorrow will be more of the same, and so will Tuesday and Wednesday. But it will get easier, I hope, as we sort of start to coalesce. And, one thing that I appreciate is the fact that so many people are listening, so many people are commenting. People are honestly giving us encouragement to keep going. So, I feel like in general, we are making positive progress. I also want to underscore that we will not be able to take the feedback that everybody gives us.
But there's some good, valuable, helpful insights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's, I guess more for people who haven't been through this process, that, getting the insights are helpful. We will I'm positive, and we already have, we will make some changes as a result of that feedback, but we also will take that feedback, but not necessarily either agree with it or not necessarily be able to incorporate it. So I just so you understand how that feedback process works. Okay. All righty. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening while the sun is still shining.